I'm Gail Sheridan, I'm Tommy's wife, and on behalf of him and I, we cannot believe the turnout again. Everywhere we've went, really, it has been unbelievable. They're saying there's at least another 200 outside, can't get in. We're going to try and open up another hall. I think Tommy's going to speak later on to them. And there's quite a lot of people all coming up from the square, so remarkable, absolutely remarkable. Thank you. In January of this year, Tommy kicked off his Hope Over Fear tour in Kirkcaldy. That meeting was videotaped and it was put onto YouTube, and to date there's been nearly 160,000 views of that videotape. After that, he continued his tour all over Scotland, from the north of Scotland to the borders, from the east of the country to the west. He's spoken at 109 meetings. Tonight is his 110th meeting. He's spoken to over 25,000 people on that tour. He's spoken in sports centres, community centres. He's spoken in wee pubs all over Scotland, some of them very notorious, especially ones here in Glasgow. He's spoken in village halls, community halls, church halls. The only hall he's not really spoken is an orange hall, and I think he would have done that if he'd been asked as well. So tonight here, this is his final speech on the Hope Over Fear tour. So ladies and gentlemen, for the last time, Tommy Sheridan, my husband.
Thanks. They say behind every man there's a brilliant woman. Oh, there you go. There's the proof of it. Brothers and sisters, some home keeping stuff first. I've just been informed by one of our stewards that there may be as many as 500 outside the now. So what we're going to do, folks, what we're going to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to go through some of the points I think are important in this final couple of days of the referendum, and we're going to have a meeting. I'm then going to ask, if you don't mind, if you can depart the hall around about 9 o'clock, and we're going to have another meeting. So we're just going to have 2 meetings. What we've had to do at all the recent meetings, including Motherwell last night, Dundee last week, Aberdeen last week, what we've had to do is turn up to halls where the management won't let anybody else in, and then we've had to have overspill meetings of 200 and 300 people. I've got to say, as I remarked last night, brothers and sisters, we are having bigger overspill meetings than the No campaign's having rallies. It's absolutely magnificent, brothers and sisters. Thank you, each and every one of you, for making the effort to come along here tonight. I think it's quite clear now that we are on the cusp of making history. You know, I started last night by making the point, 2 years ago, I was invited to take part in a weekly politics show down in London with Andrew Neil, who I was reacquainted with last Sunday there. And they asked me if I would do a wee sketch, and if I'm perfectly honest, it was a piss-taking sketch. They asked me to go into a kilt shop and pretend I was looking for a kilt, and then what they would do is they would film me talking about an independent Scotland and the possibilities of an independent Scotland. Now, it was cheesy beyond cheese, right? There's no doubt about it. At the end, I had to pull up the kilt. Obviously, it was covered. And some people said, "Oh, Tommy, you know, you've let them take the piss, you've let them patronise. And the truth is, there's an element of that there, because at that time it was hard to get the message over. I got to speak about an independent Scotland. I got to speak about an independent socialist Scotland. I got to get a message that wasn't getting told by some of the commentators. And when I got into the studio that night, they were sniggering and they were sneering, and it was quite patronising, you know. Can I say 2 years later, they're not sniggering and they're not sneering any longer? The truth is, brothers and sisters, when we win this vote on Thursday, it's going to be an incredible victory. We are going to rewrite all of the history books. We're going to have to make a new film, because David and Goliath just doesn't cut it. Just doesn't cut it. Think about everything that's been raged against us here. They have thrown everything at the campaign for independence. Not only are we going to lose the Royal Bank of Scotland, not only are we going to lose Lloyd's, not only are we going to have increased food prices, not only are we going to have increased telecommunication prices, we've also got the Deutsche Bank coming on at the weekend and managing to get a full page coverage in the Daily Pravda for the No campaign. The Deutsche Bank's telling us if we vote yes, there's going to be a Great Depression. You just wonder, you know, pestilence, rabies, what's coming next? It is utter garbage. Utter garbage. And what they've done is they've miscalculated, brothers and sisters. They've miscalculated. You see, that's the type of campaign they could have fought in 79. It's even the type of campaign they could have fought in 97, 98. But see, in the modern era, where everybody has got access to the internet, and everybody's got access to social media, and everybody's got the capacity to look things up for yourself. They tell us, Royal Bank of Scotland's leaving, oh no, BBC exclusive. And then you go online 2 minutes later, Royal Bank of Scotland have sent a letter to the staff, there will be no jobs leaving Scotland. It's merely a registration. They tell us Tesco's are going to increase their prices in an independent Scotland, BBC exclusive. And then you go online 10 minutes later, Tesco have issued a statement, we have got no intention of increasing prices in independent Scotland. How many lies can they get away with? Deutsche Bank, they're giving credibility to Deutsche Bank. It's already got 15 bloody fraud investigations in here, but we have to believe Deutsche Bank. Brothers and sisters, I think we are shown here that we're no wee wains any longer. We're no wee slaves any longer. You see, the attitude of these people was summed up for me yesterday when I was sitting in a Radio Scotland studio as part of the Jeremy Vine show, and I was sitting opposite George Folks, and I was asked to comment about BBC bias, and I made the point, BBC bias, they have been utterly disgraceful throughout this whole campaign. Utterly disgraceful. I gave the examples of the Royal Bank of Scotland's going to leave thousands of jobs to go, and then the Royal Bank of Scotland themselves say that's not true. I gave the example of Tesco and the food prices. Tesco themselves says that's not true. But it's too late, isn't it? Because it's already out there. It's in the ether. They've dropped it in there. They've put it into people's minds. And they know what they're doing. They've been doing it for decades, brothers and sisters. Let's remember it's the same BBC that used to show the wee train every night that was supposedly breaking the miners' strike, only to find out after the strike it was the same bloody train. It wasn't the extra trains, but the BBC punted it as if this was the strike getting broken. The same BBC that refused to expose the cover-up of the lies in relation to the weapons of mass destruction that led to an illegal war in Iraq. The same BBC was supposed to believe is magnificent and independent, but they couldn't discover the Jimmy Savile scandal, or the paedophile scandal, or the Hillsborough cover-up. The same BBC. Well, in the days when we never had access to communication, in the days when we didn't have access to information at our fingertips, that type of corporate bullying may just have worked. But you know what? See, on Thursday, we're going to announce a victory for the social media over the corporate media. That's what we're going to announce on Thursday. Mr. Folk sat there in the studio and he said, it's a disgrace, this Yes campaign have mobilised mobs to come and intimidate journalists. The great BBC, renowned across the world, and this Yes campaign's mobilising mobs. And I said, you know what, Mr. Fox? Lord Fox, that sums you up. Your attitude to ordinary people is you think you're better. You think ordinary citizens don't have the right to protest, don't have the right to inform themselves, don't have the right to organise themselves. You think that these people should stay in their place and do as they're told. Our information for Mr. Fox, because he says to me, oh, this is terrible, Mr. Sheridan is personalising this. And I says, it is personal, George. Are you no picking up your 300 quid a day for being a member of the House of Lords? Of course it's personal, Mr. Fox. Of course it's personal, Mr. Fox. Because you are part of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that have been dispatched to spread fear and alarm across Scotland with your super red ermine robes flowing in the sky. You and your pal George Robertson, John Reid, Jack McConnell, all former Labour politicians, now sitting in the House of Lords, hold their heads in shame for becoming ermine lords. According to them, there's going to be a new plague and pestilence. Mr. Robertson used the word, if we vote for independence, it will be cataclysmic. Cataclysmic. Brothers and sisters, these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse couldn't give a damn about poverty in Scotland, couldn't give a damn about low pay in Scotland, couldn't give a damn about pensioner poverty and fuel poverty. The reason they are touring the country to try and frighten the masses to vote no is because they know on Friday they're getting their P45s because we don't need the House of Lords. That's the fact. We don't need an unelected House of Lords. We don't need to contribute £50 million a year to give them £300 a day to go and sit in the nearest hostelry with our wee sherries and discuss the old days. Brothers and sisters, let's be clear about this. They and all of their pomp and all of their privilege They represent the past. We represent the future. That's the reality. That's the reality. They send up, when the four horsemen of the apocalypse fail miserably, they send up the Three Stooges. Mr. Clegg, Mr. Miliband, Mr. Cameron. How apt it is, brothers and sisters, that they all come up together. How apt, what have they got in common? These Three Stooges. Number one, they're all personal millionaires. UK, aye, it's alright for you, that's for sure, Mr. Cameron, Clegg and Miliband. You've done alright with it. And the other thing that unites them is their common goal of implementing more austerity, more cuts in services, more cuts in living standards. Mr. Miliband is already on record as stating categorically, if we are elected in 2015, we will stick to Tory spending plans. They plan to cut £25 billion from public services. They plan to slash 490,000 jobs in the public sector. Local government, education, health. 60,000 of them in Scotland. 60,000 in the next 12 months. That's what a no vote brings. Miliband, we're going to stick to Tory spending cuts. Well, why the hell should you vote for Miliband then? You wouldn't trust them, brothers and sisters, to run a bath. Why would you trust them to run a country? That's what we're going to say, Mr. Miliband. Is it any wonder the working class of England feels so disenfranchised, feels so disempowered, when that's the standard of political representation that's on offer? We've got to say loud and clear here, brothers and sisters, the ordinary working class of England, those in Liverpool, those in Newcastle, those in East End of London, those who have felt the iron heel of cuts in wages, cuts in living standards, cuts in public services, those who have heard the crap that we're all in it together, while the millionaires milk more and more of the resources of this country, and the poor are expected to make do with the scraps for their table. The working class of England are rooting for us. They're rooting for us. The working class of England recognise that if we beat Westminster and that corrupt crew on Thursday, that gives them encouragement to take them on as well. Yeah. We are not in any way, shape or form, brothers and sisters, abandoning the working class of England. No. We are leading the working class of England. That's what we're doing on Thursday. We have to explain categorically. When this man comes up last night to preach to 800 of his party members in Aberdeen, you know, he's coming up to speak to the public, invited audiences only, you know. I've got to say, he comes up and he starts to preach to them. I had to listen to it. It was a really poor situation I had. I was supposed to be on Radio 5 Live and they were about to come to me. And then it's, "So sorry, Tommy, Mr. Cameron started speaking. We're going to have to play him out first." I had to sit and listen to the whole damn speech. I heard him. He was mentioning we should stick together because we want to retain the British value of fairness. fairness. This is the man who sat in the cabinet last April and decided to punish the poor for having the audacity to live in a council or a housing association house, claim housing benefit because their wages are so damn low they can't afford their rent, and they have the audacity to give their kids a separate bedroom. How dare they said. How dare these pesky working class folk give their kids separate bedrooms? Let's punish them. And while we're at it, why don't we have a go at that other militant bunch? The disabled citizens, whose only crime, the only crime the disabled have committed is to be disabled in Britain, because you're more likely to be poor as a disabled citizen in Britain than you are in any other country in Europe. Shame. They went to housing offices and they filled in their application forms for houses, and they explained, we need a room to store the wheelchair, need a room for the kidney dialysis machine, I need the room for my full-time carer, my husband or my wife who have given up their job to become my full-time carer because they love me. Because they love me and they want to care for me, and they're saving the state the money that would be spent on full-time carers. And they need a spare bedroom, because if the partner doesn't get to sleep overnight, they can't care. They can't care for the disabled citizen, because the disabled citizen, because of their illness, can't sleep at night. Thousands of disabled citizens are in that situation. Brothers and sisters, think about it. 70% of the victims of the bedroom tax were disabled citizens. These bastards in government decided to try and cut the incomes of not just the poorest, but the most vulnerable citizens in Britain. And then he comes up here and lectures us about fairness. In the same meeting, they introduced the bedroom tax. They introduced a tax cut for millionaires. A tax cut for millionaires. 13,000 millionaires today pay £100,000 a year less in tax than they did last year. Fairness. My arse, fairness, brothers and sisters. My arse. I was asked to comment on the speech when Radio 5 Live come back to me. I said it was millionaire manure. It was Bullingdon Bull. It was Tory Tosh. And the wee presenter was having kittens, you know, because you're not supposed to say that on the Radio Live. Oh, what you doing attacking Mr. Cameron? I says, I'm attacking Mr. Cameron because you've just gave him 14 bloody minutes to talk a lot of rubbish on live radio. This is the man who's presided over an increase in poverty of 900,000 in 1 year. 900,000 more people in poverty in the first year of the condemned government. Brothers and sisters, think about this. Think about this if you've got any undecideds out there. Think about this if you've got any undecideds in your family or your workplace. Think about the social statistics. We live in a rich country. We live in a country that's been part of a union for 300 years. 300 years later, 1 in 4 of the Waynes in Scotland are growing up in poverty. 1 in 3 in Glasgow. We're living in a city where 4,000 Waynes a day are relying on food banks for survival. We're living in a country with the highest rate of fuel poverty in Europe, the highest housing costs in Europe, the highest transport costs in Europe. We're living in a country with the longest working hours in Europe. with the least number of holidays in Europe. We're living in a country where 1 million people, 100,000 of them here in Scotland, don't have a contract of employment. They've got the insecurity of 0 hours contracts, getting paid less than the national minimum wage. 1 million across the UK, 100,000 here in Scotland. Brothers and sisters, see with that collection of statistics. See the next time you see Murphy or Fox or any of the other Better Together crew campaigning under the slogan, Better Together. Please go up to them very politely. Don't waste any eggs, give them to the food banks. You go up to them very politely and say, excuse me, see if we're better together. Why, oh why are we not better today? Why are we not better today? 300 years of a union. 1 in 4 Wains in poverty. 890,000 people in Scotland in poverty. UK okay? No, it's no okay for us. It's no okay for us. And I look at the papers today, and you know, the papers tell a story here. We've got the Daily Record, and some of you may be aware that the Daily Record last week, they allowed the No campaign to edit it for a day. Oh. I didn't notice any difference. It's been the Pravda of the No campaign since the off. And now, a couple of days for the election, we have to believe the vow. They've signed a vow. By the way, this has been Nick Clegg, whose his last vow is, I vow never to vote for an increase in tuition fees, only to be elected and to vote for an increase in tuition fees. They'll get Cameron, Clegg and Miliband, and I don't want to go into the detail of it, it's not worth it. But they talk about guarantee number 1. More powers for the Parliament. What more powers for the Parliament? There is no more powers for the Parliament, it's just more powers for the Parliament. Imagine you stand for election. Vote for me, I'm going to make things better. It is vacuous. It is empty. But the Daily Record's given it big licks. I was on, actually, I remember somebody shouted a word out there. Excuse me, because there are some young people in here tonight. But I remember being on Celebrity Big Brother a wee while ago, and I remember they didn't take too kindly to a word that I kept using, which I think's dead appropriate for this. It's pish. That's right, it's absolute pish. And then there's this wee statement here. Honestly, I need to read this out to you. I need to read this out because of what I'm doing now, right? It says, the Scottish Parliament will be a permanent and irreversible part of the British Constitution. Right? Now, the reason I need to read that out is, I'm doing a law degree now, right, at Strathclyde Uni. And see if you were a first year law student and you were to write in an essay that the British Parliament could pass a law to make anything irreversible and irreplaceable, you'd fail the exam. You'd fail the exam. The British Constitution doesn't exist. There is no British Constitution. There is only the sovereignty of Parliament. You see, the way Britain works is every single government that gets elected can change anything and everything that the previous government did or said. Do you know why that's important? It's important because that is a heap of pish. I'll tell you why else. I'll tell you why else it's important. It's important to understand here. We detour. It's important to understand that the Labour Party were elected in 1997 with a majority of over 100 MPs. Under the unwritten British Constitution, they could have done anything. They could have reversed the anti-trade union laws. They could have taken gas and electricity and the railways back into public ownership. They could have introduced a wealth tax to cut the grotesque division in wealth between the rich and the poor. Brothers and sisters, after 13 years of Labour in power, we had more people in poverty than we did in 1997. We had a bigger gap in inequality than we had in 1997. And their only achievement was to lie to us and drag us into illegal wars. That's what the last Labour government did. They could have done so much more because of the power they had in their hands, and they blew it. And that's why we're no fond for Gordon Brown's promises, you know. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse didn't work. The 3 Stooges aren't going to work. They've introduced Dumb and Dumber. Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown. By the way, one of them's responsible for presiding over a brutal regime. One of them's responsible for being a hopeless leader. One of them's responsible for disgraceful personal behaviour while in power. That was Alistair Darling talking about Gordon Brown, by the way. Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder they've got problems, eh? When that's their attitude to each other. You know, I listened to the news today. I listened to them talking about this great beast, political beast, Gordon Brown. And the commentator, he said, oh, here's a wee bit for the yes campaign. Here's a wee bit for the no campaign. Oh, and here's Gordon Brown. Oh, he made a marvellous speech. It was full of passion. And of course, Gordon Brown, he's got a lot of credibility in Scotland. Former Prime Minister. Brothers and sisters, let's go onto social media and I'm going to remind everybody, because we don't seem to do this. Gordon Brown, former Prime Minister. He was never elected Prime Minister in his life. He was never an elected Prime Minister. Gordon Brown was an appointed Prime Minister who lost the bloody election. What credibility is that, to go around the people of Scotland and try and whip them into line? Gordon Brown, who's attacked the SNP for having cuts in corporation tax in their white paper. By the way, I don't want to cut corporation tax, I just want corporations to pay their bloody tax. That'd be good, right? But I'm fed up listening to Labour politicians attacking the SNP for planning to cut corporation tax. They cut it 3 times. They cut it 3 times, Gordon Brown. Brothers and sisters, here is the other paper I want to bring you attention to. Here's the Evening Times today. Some of you might not have seen it. It's got a front page headline. Please go online and let's pass this about all the social networks. Food bank mums wet nappy agony. This is a story from a real person working in a real food bank, dealing with over 1,000 families every single week, relying on food banks for survival. And the woman, the Reverend, who's quoted in this story, makes the point that they deal with people on benefits. They deal with people who have had sanctions, because they were late for an interview. But the increasing number of people they're dealing with is people on 0 hours contracts who have got no security of employment, who don't know from week to week, from day to day, whether they're going to have a job. She refers to the story of a working mother who can't afford to change her wain's nappies until they're dirty. She keeps the nappies on when they're wet because she can't afford to pay for nappies for when the wain is simply wetted the nappy. I've got to say to you, there's an editorial here. Need for charity is too great. Please try and send this editorial on, brothers and sisters. This editorial makes the point that we live in 21st century Scotland. We live in a city that used to be known as the workshop of the world. And we now have 4,000 children a day relying on handouts, relying on donations of tins of soup and nappies. We're better together. That's what they want us to stay with. Brothers and sisters, I say to you loud and clear here. People say to you all the time, oh, but Tommy, we can't be certain of what we're going to get in an independent Scotland. I'll tell you what, we can be certain about what we're leaving behind. We can be certain of what we're leaving behind. You see, if there was a no vote on Thursday, you can be absolutely certain on Friday that there will be more low pay, there will be more job losses, there will be more privatisation, there will be more 0 hours contracts, there will be more food banks, there will be more grotesque inequality of wealth, power and income. You can be certain about that, absolutely certain. That's what a no vote brings. A yes vote opens up possibilities, releases hope within our hearts of a new and a better Scotland. You see, this is why they despise us. This is why they're putting us down. They talk about intimidation. They say they've been intimidated. They've been intimidated. We're being told by every bloody banker and big business boss, don't vote no, you're going to lose your job, food prices are going to go up, telecommunication prices are going to go up, but we're intimidating, we're bullying. On the way in the car, I had a phone call from a friend whose wife works for Thomas Cook. They've just received letters today, Thomas Cook, instructing the staff to vote no. Instructing the staff to vote no. Brothers and sisters, don't they understand? We're supposed to live in a democracy. We're supposed to have things called secret ballots. We no longer are going to kneel down to these bosses. They think there's old mill owners. They think we're still serfs and peasants. Brothers and sisters, 1831 it was. 1831 was the day of the last peasants' revolt, led by the great Wat Tyler. In those days, the weapon of choice was a pitchfork. 2014, there's a new peasants' revolt, and our weapon of choice is a wee lead pencil. That's what's going to happen on Thursday. A wee lead pencil. We have the potential in an independent Scotland, brothers and sisters. The potential to ensure, if you're looking for one reason above all others, to vote independence, surely it's to ensure that your children, your grandchildren, are never ever going to have to endure another Tory government. Is that not worth voting for? Is that not worth voting for? you also have the right to vote to keep our health service public, to keep our health service free at the point of need. This mob here say, oh, vote no, and we will retain the right of the Scottish Parliament to decide what's spent in the health service. Oh, brilliant, eh? If they cut the amount of money they give us, how can you spend more in the health service without slashing every other service? Do they think we're daft? Think about this. Think about this. Not everybody might understand this. Not everybody's interested in politics, although Scotland's became much more interested in politics. I like the Kevin Bridges comment. We could all resit our modern studies higher now, can we? Think about the way it works. You work in Scotland, you pay your taxes, we raise revenues from oil and gas, food and beverages, fishing. We raise all these taxes and all these revenues, and then we send it down to London. And then we go down to London and we say, gonna give some of it back. It's like pocket money, isn't it? Gonna give some of it back. That's the way we run the Scottish Parliament. We have to go and ask them for money to run our health service, our education service, and all the other services in Scotland. A no vote on the 19th of September. They're already privatising their health service. They've already invited 60 private firms to come in and tender for the provision of health care. That's what they've done. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Royal Bank of Scotland. They've all been invited in. Virgin Money. By the way, is it any wonder? Bupa are back in the no campaign. Is that a surprise for you? Yeah? Private health, back in the no campaign. They've been invited in to tender for the provision of health care in England. There is no public health service in England any longer. That's why tens of thousands are marching in the streets of London. But you don't see that in the BBC. They don't see that in the BBC. We have got in Scotland free elderly care. We've got in Scotland free prescriptions, free eye tests. We're going to go down. We're going to go down to London in the back of a no vote on the 19th. Hey, how's it going there? I know we've voted no, but see that health service up the road? We don't want to privatise it. We want to keep it public. We don't want the big businesses taking over it. And by that time, you know who's going to be in power, don't you? A right-wing, reactionary Tory UKIP alliance. That's who's going to be in power. And they're going to look at us and say, what? You want us to give you more money to run your public health service when we're privatising ours here? On your way. On your way, they're going to say, you bunch of cowards. They're going to look at us and they're going to say, hey, you can sing your Flower of Scotland at your football games and your rugby matches. But when you had the chance to take your destiny in your own hands, you bottled it. You bottled it. You will have to suffer the consequences. Education. What do you mean you don't have upfront tuition fees? What do you mean you don't charge young people going to university £9,000 a year to study? How dare you do that? That's what we charge down here. In fact, we're going to increase it to 11,000 within 2 years. Up the road, implement the same privatisation as we're doing. Brothers and sisters, we have to say, in an independent Scotland, we're going to fight damn hard to make sure there's no upfront tuition fees. But I'll tell you what, that's not what we're stopping. Working class folk for every single housing scheme and village in Scotland. Yes, they should have the opportunity to go to university. Yes, they should have the opportunity to go to college and learn a trade and a skill. But we don't want them to have to endure 3 or 4 years of poverty to do it. They should qualify for a living grant when they go to university or college. In an independent Scotland, we have the freedom to save those services. And perhaps, brothers and sisters, one of the most important freedoms of all As I say at a lot of my meetings, it might not mean the same to everybody. It means a lot to me because the amount of times I've been arrested outside Faslane nuclear submarine base, I think it's eventually going to be worth it. Because on Thursday, we're going to vote yes. And on Friday, we're going to announce to the world, we do things differently here in Scotland. See that £250 million a year that is currently spent on illegal, immoral, scrap metal called nuclear weapons. We here in Scotland, we're going to spend it instead on schools and hospitals and doctors and nurses. That's what we're going to spend it on. It's worth voting yes just for that reason, brothers and sisters. Just to announce to the planet that we are a new country. We're a country of peace. People sometimes ask in the meetings, Tommy, will we have a defence force in an independent Scotland? And I say yes. Yes, we'll have a defence force. But we won't have an invasion force because we'll not be invading any other country in the world. We have to approach this next 2 days, brothers and sisters, with the maxim of the immortal Nelson Mandela in our heads. May your life's choices be guided by hope, not by fear. We are people who say to us, Tommy, can you afford all this? You want to spend more on health? You want to spend more on education? You want to spend more on the pensioners? You want to build more social housing to solve homelessness? Wouldn't it be a wonderful idea in an independent Scotland, brothers and sisters, if we actually joined up thinking? If we actually identified social problems and dealt with them? Homelessness. 200,000 individuals and families who don't have homes to live in or are living in overcrowded conditions, damp housing. Over 200,000, many of them young people, unemployed. Does it work out that you need to be a rocket science to say, hey, why don't we train the new generation of plumbers, of glaziers, of bricklayers, of quantity surveyors? Why don't we train them? Why don't we produce the bricks from the Scottish quarries? We resource the resources from here in Scotland. We've got the cement, we've got the bricks, we've got the glasses, we've got the workers. Why don't we build the bloody houses for people to live in? That's what we're going to do in an independent Scotland. That's joined up thinking. That's what the possibility is for us in an independent Scotland. People say, can you afford that? Brothers and sisters, all of the economic analysis that's been done in this country, all of it, has concluded categorically that this country, without oil and gas, is a top 20 nation. Because of our food and our beverages, because of our tourism, because of our fisheries. With oil and gas, we're a top 5 nation in the planet. That's the reality. This mob try and frighten us. They try and scare you. The oil's running out. The oil's running out. You've only got 40 years left. As I said, as I said in the meeting last night, I'll need to change it. It's last night, I said, they're telling us Scotland should be worried You've only got 40 years of oil left. We say Westminster should be worried. You've only got 2 days of oil left. That's the reality. That's the reality. Imagine you'll get pulled into your work tomorrow, eh? The boss wants to see you in the office, yeah? Pulls you in. Oh, I've got bad news for you. And you're sitting there fidgeting, thinking, oh no, I shouldn't have taken the toilet rolls home. I thought everybody was taking them. And the boss says to you, I've got bad news for you. I can only guarantee you employment for the next 40 years. You're supposed to be frightened of that, eh? This is what they're telling us. Only 40 years left. Brothers and sisters, what we going to do with 40 years of oil and gas reserves? We're going to invest it. We're going to invest it in wind, wave and solar power. We're going to become a clean energy producer in Scotland. We already have 25% of Europe's reserves here in Scotland. We're going to develop our public services to make them first class. We're going to develop an oil fund so that we can dip into that to make sure we never ever again fall into poverty as a nation. And then you look at the report, oilandgaspeople.com. Please go back and look at it. I've tried to tweet it, I've tried to Facebook it. Oilandgaspeople.com, 3rd of September, produced a report, expert analysis, based on geological surveys, based on seismic experts, based on all of the oil and gas industry leaders. And what do they say in this report? They say that our west coast, they call it the Atlantic margin, west coast of Scotland, has got untapped oil and gas reserves that have been underestimated by 100%. They are saying in this report that there is more than enough oil and gas in the west coast to last us 100 years. £1 trillion. Here's the democratic question. In the midst of a referendum about the future of Scotland, why is that not been in the news? Why is that not on the front page of the Daily Pravda? Because they want to hide it from us. They want to keep it away from us. They want to keep us ignorant and frightened. Imagine everybody in Scotland knew that we've got 100 years of untapped oil and gas reserves to rely on, worth £1 trillion. Would that influence our votes? Maybe. Maybe. Look at it this way. See if that report on the 3rd of September had come out, had said there's only 10 years of oil in the western coast of Scotland. Do you think you would have heard about it? You bet your bottom dollar you would have heard about it. Brothers and sisters, we've got to say it loud and clear here. In 1981, the Defence Minister at the time, Michael Heseltine, issued an edict for the North Sea oil and gas industry. They were not to invest any money in exploration or extraction in the west coast because it was in the direct shipping line of the nuclear submarines. Brothers and sisters, we've got the solution, haven't we? In an independent Scotland, get rid of Trident, extract the oil. That's what we're going to do in an independent Scotland. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. That's the reality of this referendum in only 2 days' time. Brothers and sisters, this movement, this Yes movement, has been the biggest grassroots movement in Scotland's political history. I was involved in the last big grassroots movement against the poll tax. That was a movement that mobilised people that had never been involved in politics before. That was a movement that stimulated anger and activity in working class communities and villages and housing schemes. against Thatcher and her poll tax. This movement dwarfs it. Dwarfs it. Brothers and sisters, here's the double. Here's the double. We started off the poll tax campaign and they said, you'll never win. You'll never win. You're taking on the Iron Lady. She's invincible. Brothers and sisters, we melted down the Iron Lady and sent her off to the political knackers yard. Here's the double. David Cameron says, he says in his speech last night, he won't be around for forever. Brothers and sisters, let's tell him loud and clear, he's not going to be around for another 7 days. That's the reality. He's gone. He's gone. We can topple 2 Tory Prime Ministers. That's what we can do. Brothers and sisters, I have to say loud and clear here, there is absolutely no doubt that we are big enough, we are smart enough, we are strong enough, and we're certainly rich enough to stand on our own 2 feet. There's no doubt about that. They keep saying, you know, oh, it's forever, it's irreversible, it's irrevocable. We know that! We know that! That's why we're voting yes! Because we know that! 143 countries have secured their independence from Britain in the last 90 odd years. Not one has asked to come back. Not one. Why would we be any different, eh? Brothers and sisters, I have to say to you, in trying to close my remarks for the night, and we'll allow time for questions and contributions. There's a couple of people want to make some contributions and they're very, very welcome to do so. I've been approached by Davey from the Black Triangle Disabled Group. I've been approached by Alan Bissett, who's done a tremendous campaign himself, a playwright who's done fantastic work, particularly in the arts and drama. And anybody else that wants to make a contribution or wants to ask a question, please do so. But can I finish, brothers and sisters, by making this point? We stand now, and the only question that's left, the only question, because we've answered, are we big enough, are we rich enough, are we smart enough, are we tall enough, are we strong enough? We've answered all that over and over and over again. The only question left, are we brave enough? Are we brave enough? I usually try and finish my contribution to these meetings by bringing to the meeting a song which helps to inspire me as I travel all over Scotland, travel miles and miles north, south, east, west. There's a song that for me epitomises what we're up against when we take on the powerful, when we take on the multi-millionaires and the billionaires. Let's be clear about this, folks. As I said on Sunday to Andrew Neil, when he's talking about all these people that are warning us about independence, you know, Paul McCartney, David Beckham. The one I was worried about, I've got to say, I thought this might have a big effect on people. Simon Cowell, I thought. Because a lot of us wear our trousers high, and you know, maybe we'll be influenced by Simon Cowell, multi-millionaire Simon Cowell. As I said on Sunday, brothers and sisters, and we've got to say in the next 2 days, this referendum isn't about the millionaires. This referendum is about the millions. It's about the millions. Please in this next couple of days, keep in your heart the verse of the Labby Sifri song, From Something Inside So Strong. Brothers and sisters, when they insist we're just not good enough, when we know better, just look them in the eyes and say, we're going to do it anyway! Thanks very much, brothers and sisters. Thank you. Thanks folks. Look, I'm sorry I went on a bit longer than I'd planned. I apologise. I just got carried away. Sorry.
There's 300 or 400 people downstairs, and how many, John, outside? Another 500 outside, so